So I've been using the same cooking technology since I was a little kid. There couldn't possibly be any new tech in the kitchen that I should be spending money on right now.
Well, Scott, I promise to not disrupt your tinfoil too much, but there's actually been huge developments in kitchen technology over the past 10 to 15 years that you may have been asleep for, but that could change your life.
Some of the technology out there is really radical and really useful, but the reality is you're going to have to pry the cast iron skillet from my cold dead hands.
If I was going to pick one technology that has impacted my life the biggest in the kitchen, it would definitely be an air fryer.
So why did the air fryer change your life?
Well, I mean, to be able to cook something that fast, that quickly, and it to be perfect almost every single time, there's been nothing like it out there before. Unless it was really expensive, and we're not going to play with that. But I mean, do you guys have air fryers?
Yep. I have multiple.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite thing to cook in it?
Probably potatoes, because you can get a nice lard reaction on an air fryer relatively easy in a short amount of time, and it's somewhat foolproof.
Mm-hmm. You got one, Matt?
I have an air fryer. In my last home, we had a range that had an air frying oven. And that was fabulous because it takes everything that a countertop air fryer can do and does it in a massive cavity. And it's wonderful because you can really spread things out. Just like Ben was saying, like when you cook potatoes, the disadvantage of countertop air fryers is, you have to periodically like pop it out, reposition, pop it out, reposition. If you want everything to be 100% uniformly brown, with an in-oven air fryer, you can spread everything out on a nice wide basket and it all browns very uniformly without having to mess with it.
Yeah, we pack our air fryer tight. Like it's a little countertop one and things are stacked on top of each other. Yeah, I could see that an oven one being a lot more efficient.
I actually like doing steak in an air fryer. You may think
Yes.
I'm a heathen for that, but it works really well.
Steak, chicken, pork tenderloins, man.
Jenny was putting a steak inside of the air fryer, and I'm like, don't you dare. It actually came out pretty good. Crispy, and it was still rare on the inside. We eat all our steaks rare. But yeah, air fryers, legit, man.
I mean, they are legit, but they're an evolution of a technology that's actually been around for a lot longer. And you alluded to it, like maybe this has been around before, but in a much more expensive format, and we never played with it. So back in the 90s, GE developed this concept called the Advantium oven. Really cool, very 90s-esque name, right? And the way it works is by using microwaves, convection, and halogen light all at the same time to cook 8 times faster than a traditional oven. The disadvantage with that is, of course, you have 3 different modes of cooking at the same time, so it's going to naturally be a much more expensive appliance. They're typically only available as either built-in or over-the-range configurations. And so the countertop air fryer is really the answer to that, and the next evolution being the in-cavity air fryer.
Isn't it the same thing that KFC built their brand on? Is that the same tech?
It's a very similar tech. So the tech that KFC and a lot of restaurant companies built their tech on is called an impingement oven. Impingement ovens use microwave and high velocity, high temperature air to cook very rapidly. Think Turbo Chef. The way a Turbo Chef oven works is it heats air to a very high temperature and blows it at 60 miles an hour at the food and uses microwaves to cook the inside while the outside is getting that nice golden brown that Ben alluded to with the Maillard reaction.
Yeah, I mean, going to like Subway, they have their own version of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, those are my 2 interactions with these fancy ovens: is Subway and KFC.
So we know that the technology is maturated to where it can go onto commercial properties very easy. Every Subway has a Turbo Chef in it, or whatever their brand of a Turbo Chef is, and Lord knows they use it a million times a day. So the technology's maturated, which is really beautiful. It's just a challenge of convincing the consumers to invest in whatever mode or method makes sense for them or financial sense. But
I mean, I had a speed oven in our last home. It was a Monogram Advantium, and the benefit of it was you could cook 3 steaks at the same time and get grill marks on them in 8 minutes with no preheating. Kind of mind bending when you think about it.
I don't know. So do you prefer air fried steaks over like steaks on a griddle?
I'm not a fan of pan seared steak personally. But like steaks on a griddle don't really do it for me. I really like either grilling, air frying, or I miss my Advantium oven, but we're in a rental, so I can't install a built-in appliance. But that was really pretty freaking cool to be able to knock out steaks in 8 minutes and have it actually come out with real grill marks.
Did you bring it with you when you moved? Is it in your
No,
garage?
unfortunately not. That had
Just
to stay behind.
Make a little cutout cabinet in
Closure.
your garage.
Well, so there's 2 different flavors of the Advantium ovens. There's 120 volt models and 240 models. I had a 240, and there was no way that was going to fly in a rental house to try to hook that thing up.
Yeah, you just replace the dryer. You can do all your laundry in the oven. Just bake your clothes.
Just bake my clothes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. I mean,
Just
that
like
would
that
be.
Seinfeld episode with Kramer with the pizza oven.
Gosh, I would have loved to do the Monogram pizza oven in my last house. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That thing's pretty freaking cool. You can get to 900 degrees as a built-in oven in your kitchen and a real pizza oven.
when I end up doing my kitchen remodel, that's something I think that's going to go in it. The house that we're at, we just bought from my mother-in-law, and the last thing we're going to do is a kitchen remodel. So in the next probably 2 years, I'm going to have to do a full swap out of everything. And when I get to that point, then he's going to get to pick anything he wants, and I get to figure out what in the world a kitchen of my dreams looks like. And I think one of those 240 volt Advantiums is, or something similar to that technology, is going to be in there, just knowing how we cook.
You just stick it in there right next to your hot point dishwasher.
Yeah,
push button.
Yes.
buddy.
Yeah, the dishwasher is going to be on the lower rack, and that Advantium is going to be on the top.
Yeah.
But the other really cool thing about Advantium, like Ben, you mentioned that your wife likes to make lasagna when we were talking about dishwashers. You do know that an Advantium could bang out a perfectly crispy, bubbly lasagna in 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used the tech personally, but I know I looked at some of the finish times before we did this, and it looked like what I almost expected it to be, to where you're saving 50 to 75% of the cook times, given that you're doing the halogen, the RF, and the traditional convection all in one. It's just a scaled down model from the turbo chefs that the bigger commercial companies use. And I mean, the technology is amazing because, again, we talk about it on a very small scale with our countertop air fryers. And it's like, well, what if I could just scale that up, to 240, 50 amp or whatever? And it's like, yes, that technology exists. And you eat way more food than you realize that has that tech already in it. You don't understand that it's there because you're in front of the counter, not behind the counter.
I mean, my thing is the user interface on those things has been so bad for so long. GE finally cracked the code on how to make it user friendly. Have you ever tried to use one of the old school Advantiums, Ben?
No, I looked at some of the interfaces recently, and they're wild. They're absolutely wild.
Like the new touchscreens make it so easy to choose what you want to do. The old school models, and I think this is the reason that really held the technology back from wider adoption, you had a wheel and you had to scroll through menus with a wheel to decide what you wanted to cook. And so all of your cooking options, you're rotating a knob and pressing it, rotating a knob and pressing it. It was just mind-bendingly annoying to use. And I think that was really the big hang up. Now that we've seen the touchscreens, I think it's going to make it a big jump, and more people are going to be willing to adopt it.
So how long until you throw something in there and you just click the AI button and it figures out what the food is and what the temperature's supposed to be, and you just say out loud, I want it crispy. You just throw it in there. That's all you do.
Samsung has already done that, and so has GE. So in the bespoke product line, Samsung has the smart AI camera with an AI cooking assistant. And then GE has done the same thing. They have a smart AI camera with a cooking assistant. So you can literally tell the thing what you want to make, and it will tell you where to put it in the oven, what temperature to cook it at, let you choose the level of doneness that you want to achieve, and it'll optimize the cooking profile based on that. And you can get live feedback as it's cooking from the camera, so you can be sitting on the couch and check what your oven's doing without having to get up. Or if you have a Samsung Smart TV, you can literally pop it up in the Smart Things app, which is freaking bananas.
Have you used one of those, Ben?
Well, I haven't used the stove portion of it, but I do have multiple other Smart Things products because of the reviews that I've done, and I have a Smart Things TV. So the interaction between the Smart Things app and the TV gets me in trouble because I have mistakenly pressed buttons on my phone when trying to do videos on bespoke products at my store, and it's accidentally switched the TV in my house 10 miles away to something, and I get a phone call from home saying, what did you do? Why did it suddenly go to one of your YouTube videos? Or why are you trying to program a washing machine on the television?
It feels like we're living in the Jetsons era where they just throw in the little cube and poke the button and out pops this finished meal. I'm pretty skeptical on all that AI stuff.
I think a lot of it's going to come down just to the development of AI. If you look at every other AI technology out there, at least true AI, if you're using Midjourney or ChatGPT or Gemini, 2-3 years ago, the AI technology was just bad, or it worked, but it wasn't that good. And now we are 2 or 3 years down the line, and suddenly these pictures don't look fake anymore. The scripts look better. If it's audio, I can, make an AI sound exactly like me. It can look like me, and it does a pretty decent job. The appliance technology isn't there. But if you just think about the exponential growth of AI and what it's doing today, maybe 5 years from now, that stove is going to be able to learn a lot more and be able to cook perfectly to where, you can just tell it what you want, how you want it, when you want it, and then you just come home to that meal being done rather than having to guess and hope that you dialed it in right. It'll be foolproof cooking
really
technology.
Where the world of assisted cooking lives. There's so many forms of assisted cooking that just didn't exist even 5 years ago. GE has an integration with Heston Q, so you can buy a special pan that has a Bluetooth transmitter and a thermocouple in the bottom, and you set it on a GE induction range, and it will automatically program the range's output to match what you're trying to do in the pan. So if you tell it you want to make the perfect crepe, it will set the temperature of that pan to the perfect crepe temperature.
And I think when you have things like induction cooktop cooking, with the fact that that temperature just goes immediately up and then immediately down, it allows the programming to be able to dial that in to where you're not worrying about residual heats and be able to, really dial in what needs to be optimal rather than, leaving a pan on the stove top and then you get a lot of residual heat for minutes and then whatever you're cooking dries out.
That's a pretty crazy theory, though. So on our stove, we have in the front of the cooktop, we have 2 different size burners, which have 2 different outputs. And I don't think it really crosses our mind of which burner we're putting things on. Sometimes we're just filling up the whole cooktop with pots and pans and things, and we're saying, oh, medium heat, but one burner's medium heat's going to be way different than another burner's medium heat. And I don't think I personally spend much thought on that. I just throw it on there and turn the knob and walk away. All right, so let's go around the room. Second favorite technology. I'm gonna go first because mine's not very long. Second favorite kitchen tech that's a new thing on the market. Mine was the slap chop. Going from individually mincing and cutting stuff to just boom, boom, boom. Okay, done. Next. That was another game changer for us. Ben, what's your next pick?
Induction. I really like my cheap garbage given to me free induction cooker that I use at my shop fairly often. I did a partnership with a company it's a Midea induction top. It's very cheap. It's like $200. It's 2 burner. But the thing about it that I love so much is it's 120 volts. So I have a 120 volt cooker in my office that is capable of doing any sort of cooking that I want to for myself without an issue. Obviously, an air fryer's 120 volts, but it peaks at using, every ounce of that of what your outlet's going to use. But on the other end of it, you have the induction cooker that I can fry or cook whatever I want to, and the heat profile is superior to a smooth top while still only being on a 120 volt circuit. So I can do hot pots in my studio. I can do really good steaks in my studio with hamburgers, whatever I want to, and it's not even running very hard. So I really enjoy that. Whenever I take it home, and it's portable, so I have it at my shop, and if my kids want me to take it home to do, hot pot in the middle of the table, I just take it home and put it down, and it's there.
So what you're saying is, for Christmas, we need to install an Advantium oven in your office?
Mine, sure. With me talking to GE on that call yesterday, maybe they'll put me in touch with their cooking division, and I can be like, hey, how do I start trying your entire Advantium line?
I mean, I think my favorite innovation is kind of an extension on Ben's, but I love the new new downdraft induction cooktops that have hit the market, because it really fixes a challenge for both product classes. Like, traditionally, downdraft cooktops have sucked, and not well, because the integral downdrafts in the traditional designs had this big wide open cutout. And because there was so much heat produced by either the gas burners with all their effluent gases, but like the Elica Tesla cooktop is probably one of the coolest innovations that I've seen in cooking tech, because you can literally sit it anywhere in your kitchen. You can sit it on an island, you can throw it against the wall, you can put it basically anywhere you can run the electricity and the ductwork, and you don't even really need ductwork because it's capable of recirculating, and you can cook and get great performance and not cover your kitchen cabinets in grease without having to put in an island hood, without having to put in a telescopic downdraft, without having to resort to the old school way of doing it. It really is a cool product, and I love that thing. Ventilation is probably the most undervalued aspect of cooking as a product category. But think about it. You got an OTR above your range. It's got to move 300 CFM per minute of air through a crappy aluminum filter, through a narrow duct, to an even narrower duct to go out of your house, or it has to push it through a charcoal filter nobody ever remembers to change, to blow all that dirty air back into your kitchen. It's the worst thing you can do for your home, to buy an OTR and put it above either a range or a cooktop.
We were following the manufacturer directions on how often you're supposed to replace those filters. I think it'd be like every week, because I feel like that thing gets dirty really quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've wanted to do, there's tons of ideas you say that you want to do, but I've always been interested in trying a gas stove with and without a downdraft, or the different grades, and see exactly how well they truly take care of particulates when you're running your cooktop.
So it's interesting that you say that. There's actually a guy on YouTube that did that exact test with a smoke pen. And I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they're common in mechanical contracting to identify air leaks in a house in the building envelope. And it's hilarious. He had a 36-inch Gen Air gas downdraft cooktop, and he moved the smoke pen around the surface. The outer burners, it did okay. The burner closest, it did much better. But as soon as you obstructed that airflow with a pot, it was worthless.
And that was my question or theory, because in the political realm, there's a lot of negativity towards gas cooking because of possible health issues with using gas. New York City's banned it. California's probably planning on banning it too. And one of the studies that they did to kind of, push that was one, I think it was UC Berkeley did, when it came to particulates in the air after running a gas oven or a gas range. And I read the white paper on it, and the thing they practically never discussed in the entire academic study was what kind of downdraft or venting technology was used when they were running the sensors on NO2 or whatever particulates they were looking for. It was never mentioned in the study whatsoever that Berkeley did what was going on with that situation. They sealed off each of the rooms from the kitchen, and then they just ran it and said, well, these are the particulates you're getting. And it was totally devoid of any sort of research involved with your filters, with the hood, range hoods or anything. And I thought, you should have included that, and you should have, made suggestions on what kind of technology would have remove the particulates from the air, because if you're not making those suggestions, you're not really solving anything other than just banning it, which, I think that was the point of the study in the first place.
The converse example of exactly that scenario. So Zephyr is a ventilation company that makes really high-end hoods. They make this product called the Lux, and it's designed to recess into your ceiling above an island cooking solution, whether it's a range or a cooktop. And in one of their promotional videos, they lit a road flare under it. And it handled every ounce of that smoke and got it out. So,
sounds like me cooking.
It's entirely possible to clean the air, whether you have a gas cooking appliance, induction, or electric. It's just most homes aren't designed with proper ventilation in mind. Most salespeople don't talk about the importance of quality ventilation appliances. And most customers don't understand that there is a better solution than a $299 OTR to that problem.
So that thing that you just described, the Zephyr, how much air is it moving? What's the CFM compared to like an over-the-range microwave? A standard, like builder grade level type?
That
microwave.
demonstration was using a 1200 CFM blower.
Okay. Compared to?
An OTR on average is 300 CFM.
And I get a draft, like standing next to our over-the-range microwave. I mean, it is pulling air into it, but I can't imagine, like, how loud is that thing inside of a house?
Well, it's actually quite quiet.
Is it like a helicopter
because it has a
taking off?
completely different motor design. So, like, when you get to high-end hoods, you are getting away from universal AC motors, and you're getting to brushless motors. You're getting to very quiet motors, very quiet blower designs. I can sell you a hood that can move 4 times the air as your OTR and do it quieter than your microwave on high. And there's even additional solutions to that. You can do a remote blower where the hood is inside the house and the blower is completely outside the house, sitting on your roof or on the side of your home. So if you want to completely delete that noise from your entire home, you can with certain hoods and certain manufacturers. But proper ventilation is like the thing most people miss on. And the cool thing about like the Alica Tesla cooktop is it's the first time where a downdraft product is actually something I would recommend a customer buy, because old school traditionally designed downdraft cooktops and ranges are awful. They are terrible ventilation appliances that do an abysmal job at getting the stuff that you're cooking out of your house. Their product is probably the first one to actually conquer that issue in an effective way.
So usually people are putting downdrafts on islands or standalone isolated areas. I mean, sometimes you have to, right?
Right.
There's no other option. But if you have access to ventilation on an exterior wall, you would always recommend, besides the Elica,
a hood.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think if you buy an OTR for your kitchen, Ben, in your new reimagined world, you are making a huge mistake, my friend.
Unless it's right next to the Hot Point dishwasher.
Indeed. And it's also a Hot Point microwave.
You're just paying tribute. And that's okay.
A hot point Advantium and 120 volts.
Yes, because that would be an excellent product that wouldn't break immediately.
Right.
Well, cool. What else is out there in the kitchen world that is something that should have attention put on it that maybe it doesn't get the attention that it deserves?
Steam ovens. They're available in plumbed and non-plumbed versions. So they can either have a direct water connection where they can suck water in on demand, or you fill a little jug. And it will create high temperature steam inside the cavity. So if you want perfectly steamed vegetables that preserve all their nutritional value without having to try to steam it on the stovetop or try to steam it in the microwave, you actually have a purpose-built oven to do that. You can steam bake bread and get a perfect crust on the outside and a nice, moist, soft, tender inside. You can steam fish to perfection without overcooking it, so you preserve that delicate, flaky texture without drying it out. It really is a cool product. My favorite thing to do with the steam oven we had hooked up in one of the sales floors I worked in, though, was actually reheating pizza. And it's kind of a mind-bending concept, but it is fabulous for reheating food.
So it just has a steam spigot that's blasting it, like that you aim at it, or like how does it?
So it uses a combination of high humidity and high temperature with convection to the thing you're trying to cook. And a lot of those products have guided cooking features, kind of like what we were talking about before with assistive cooking, where if you tell it you want to bake a loaf of bread, it will choose the correct humidity, choose the correct temperature, tell you how to set up the oven to get the result you want. And that's really the reason you shop for a premium appliance. It's not necessarily because you're, some true professional chef. You could be, but a lot of people buy premium appliances because they make doing the thing they want to do easy and not require a whole lot of effort and patience to figure out how to do it.
And really what it comes down to is it circles back to the discussion we had on air fryers at the very beginning. Air fryers work because they use the high CFM fans to force the heat into the food to help it cook faster, and steam ovens do the exact same thing, but with water. Water is your medium to cook the food faster instead of just forced air. So it does allow for different or variable options that maybe even an air fryer couldn't allow for, which is really, really neat.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with steam ovens. I do with steam cleaning. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
That is pretty handy, and it's a great way to address the fact that self-cleaning murders more ovens than anything else you could possibly do with your home appliances.
I do know that. That is a fact. Self-cleaning. What was the Heston thing that they did?
So their life cycle testing is 200 self-cleans back to back. And the design fails if it can't sustain that.
Yeah, it's intense. That's a lot of temperature just pounding the electronics of that thing over and over and over again.
Now, I will tell you it has some advantages that lower value ovens don't necessarily have. So like when you get to premium price points, a lot of ranges have catalytic clean ovens, which is a totally different concept than I think anybody is really familiar with. But the ceramic that the oven is coated in has catalytic metals embedded in the ceramic. So as it's cooking, it's also cleaning. So the high temperature self-clean doesn't have to be as high temperature as it does in a Whirlpool or a GE or a KitchenAid, because those products are sold at a price point where you can't afford to embed cobalt in the ceramic of the oven. But when you buy a $10,000 range, you can afford to embed cobalt in the ceramic of the oven.
Is that the same idea? Isn't LG's like their, what is it, purple or like dark blue?
The Easy Clean surface is actually a totally different concept. It's not
a surface preparation.
It's not a surface preparation. So LG as a company does a whole lot of things besides build home appliances. One of their advanced divisions is engineering ceramics. So LG's Easy Clean interior is designed as a low aperitic ceramic surface. So aperites, if you look at a surface under a microscope, like your table, you'll see all these little ridges, and all the peaks of those ridges are called aperites. And what happens is when you have a high aperitic ceramic surface, when a food particle or a glob of sugar or cheese drops onto it, it melts down into the valleys. And so when you clean it on the surface, the peaks get cleaned, but you can't reach into those microscopic valleys, which is why when you go to manually clean, you always leave something behind. There's always some residue you just can't get rid of. LG has designed their Easy Clean surface to be low aperitic, which means those peaks and valleys are very small. And so when you do steam cleaning in an LG Easy Clean oven, because there's not really anywhere for the dirt to sink into and bake into, it pops off really easily with steam and a light wipe. Whereas you compare that to a Whirlpool or a GE or, a Samsung, they're not built that way. And so you have that same traditional, either have to burn it all away at 900 degrees for 4 hours, or I have to scrub it and just be willing to accept that there's going to be some left over. But that's why Heston can do what it can do, because it only has to run at 600 degrees instead of 900 degrees to achieve the same effect, because they embed cobalt and other rare catalytic metals into their oven cavity enamel. So it's cleaning as it's cooking. Even at lower temperatures, it's still oxidizing and degrading soils as it's cooking. So like, first off, that oven's going to stay cleaner longer, so you don't really have to self-clean it as much. And when you do self-clean it, it doesn't have to run up to 900 degrees. It only maybe has to go to 600. And then on top of that, they cover all of their wiring in Nomex, which would be prohibitively expensive for a commodity manufacturer to do. But when you're charging 10, 12, 14,000 for the range, you can afford to build it like that. You can afford it to survive.
But I mean, is there any of that stuff on your everyday big box store type products? Like, does any of that breathe down in there? Like you just described, the LG Easy Clean oven surface is.
Yeah, I mean, LG Easy Clean is probably the best oven interior you can buy because it really does work. It's not like when KitchenAid did the blue interior Aqua Lift and tried to dye it to compete. That did not work.
It looked cool.
It sure did. It just did not actually do the thing it was freaking supposed to, which really irritated customers because they took self-cleaning away, did that, and just hoped the market would accept it. And it obviously, you look at KitchenAid products today and they all have self-clean again. Magic how that happens. LG doesn't need to run self-clean because they really did develop an excellent product. You know, even range hoods, you know, you can buy a high quality range hood at an affordable price. You can get the quality of a 600 CFM range hood for $500-$600. It doesn't have to be a $2,000 hood. Obviously, if you go that far, you're going to get even more for your money, but you don't have to. When it comes to other products, like induction cooking is incredibly accessible. You can get a Frigidaire induction range on sale for $9.99.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of those pop up.
Scott, tell me about how you cook.
Honestly, that air fryer. We use that air fryer for everything. We do a lot of cooktop cooking. So in the morning, it's eggs. We got a bunch of chickens, so we eat tons of eggs. Lunch is usually some sort of chicken, lots and lots of chicken. And then, you know, dinner varies a lot. But again, it's usually like stovetop type cooking, or if it's like potatoes or things like that, air fryer. So we could literally survive with the air fryer and a cooktop. We'd be good.
So you mentioned something before about how, you know, one burner to the next, your medium is not your medium. So like, what's your experience with running into that as a frequent issue when you try to cook and you don't defer to the more skilled in the family?
What do you mean?
Like, do you have an issue with that? Like, do you end up burning things or, you know, ruining what you're trying to make because you can't get the temperature right?
It's a lot of adjustments while you're cooking, I think. So like if it's getting too hot or it's boiling too fast, I feel like I'm constantly adjusting the temperature. Now, someone who's well more versed with the tech and is a lot better at maneuvering the temperatures and stuff, and they know where it needs to be set for each burner, they probably don't have that issue, but I definitely do.
I will tell you this. Do you have gas or electric?
Gas.
So gas ranges as a commodity product. You have different size burners and they all conform to a general rule where your front right or front left is the most powerful, and then it decreases from there. You usually have a 5,000 BTU simmer burner in the back left or back right. You usually have two 13 to 19,000 BTUs either on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. And then you have your power burner. If you spend a little bit more on a range, you might have double stack burner where you have a small burner inside of a large burner and you get the two flames when you're on high. When you get down to medium to low, it drops to one. That works for the majority of people, but it is not the best experience you could have. So the reason, like we talked about this earlier, like, you know, you wouldn't buy a premium range because the price just doesn't make sense. But what if I told you that every single burner you could go from 23,000 BTUs to 500, and you didn't have to move stuff around, and you didn't have to guess which burner was the correct heat, and you didn't have to think through, well, if I put this here and try to boil, it won't get hot enough, so I got to put it here, and I got to move this over here. Like, what if you didn't have to do all those mental gymnastics every time you did try to cook?
I mean, that'd definitely be helpful. I don't know what that equates to monetarily, but like, it'd definitely be helpful.
And what if I told you that you could do very fine adjustments? So,
Are you pushing me into an induction? Is that
No,
what's happening?
I'm
You're gonna
actually
get me
not.
off of gas into induction?
I'm talking to you about a
I
premium
love
gas
gas.
range. I'm talking to you about a premium gas range because if you look at every one of the premium gas range, every feature that I'm now describing to you is part of buying that product. And like you said before, you couldn't make the mental jump to buying something that expensive. And I'm trying to give you the why as to why those things even exist. They exist for the convenience of the consumer so that you don't have to think about where to put things because every burner can do everything. The design logic by the manufacturers is to say, okay, well, we'll have a simmer burner in the back. So if you want to simmer something, you put it back there. If you want to fry something or cook at high temperatures, you put it up in the front right. If you want to do something in between, you put it on the front left. And if you want to do something in between, you've got another one that you can do it on the back left. And then you got your 10,000 B fish burner in the middle for your griddle. And that's basically the equation that every manufacturer sticks to until you make the jump to luxury ranges where you have equally sized burners with equal outputs, where you can do anything you want anywhere on the stovetop.
That seems like a much more reasonable way to do it.
It is, but it's very expensive to do it that way. Because now you don't have to, now you have 4 burners on a 30-inch professional range that can all do the same thing. You have double stage brass valves to enable you that fine degree of control all the way down to 500 or 300 BTUs, depending on the manufacturer. You have a lot more expensive gas plumbing because everything has to be of a diameter that can support burning at 23,000 BTUs or 15,000 BTUs, depending on the manufacturer. Everything gets more expensive from a construction standpoint. And so it's not going to be for everybody because you can't make a $799 range that works the way a $4,000 range does.
Have you ever tested any of these ranges that he's talking about? Have you ever played around with any of them?
Not really. I can't get enough in my area to be able to fully test them. We don't have a lot of gas appliances where we live, and it's also a pretty poor area as well. So there aren't a lot of luxury homes that have those that they're getting rid of that we can really noodle around and test on. That's not saying we don't have them. It's just too infrequent for me to kind of stop what I'm doing and be able to test them. But I understand everything he's talking about. I've seen them. It's just I don't have the opportunity to really mess with them as much as what I'd like to. But in my experiences with them, you can feel the difference when you deal with a stove, like even a Thermidor that has like double stage valves, and you work with them. You realize how much better built those products are than your basic throwaway stoves are. But I mean, it's because that price point's 3-4 times as much.
Now, Scott, do you have your tinfoil hat ready?
Yep. It's always on. Can't see it.
Excellent. We're about to go down the rabbit hole. What if I told you you could get all those cool features and all you had to do was install an electric outlet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been cooking with gas since I was a baby. And babies shouldn't be cooking, first of all. There's red flag number 1. But I love gas. It heats up instantly. The smell, like just everything about gas. Like there's no way that I would ever go away from gas.
But what if, bear with me, you didn't have to buy a $4,000 range to get the peak performance out of your gas, and all you had to do was put in an electric outlet? Because that's what induction does. It gives you that same level of control that we just talked about, where every burner can do everything, where you can finally control the heat input to what you're cooking without you having to spend an absolute fortune on a gas range.
I've got a cast iron griddle that's probably older than me that we cook a lot of stuff on. And you can't use that on induction, right?
That is not true. And Ben, I think you would agree.
Yeah, I literally on my induction that I talked about earlier, I only cook with cast iron on it. It's great.
Hmm. Yeah, same benefits. I mean, because you see all the pots and pans that they sell, and they're all space agey type designs.
They're space agey type, but they just have cast iron in them. The cast iron is conductive for induction, so anything that's cast iron will automatically work, and they hold heat so well because of how thick they are compared to your typical induction pans. I don't know why they don't mass market cast iron as being like great for induction, but they are.
All right, well, the tinfoil hat's a little bit shorter. My only experience with electric stoves, and I've had coil tops and glass tops. Cast iron was just terrible on both of those. The coil top, it never got hot. Whenever it did, it was always hot in the middle, and it was weird. And it took forever to heat up. And glass tops, I think I actually broke a glass top on accident with my cast iron. So that was a huge fail.
So you want to really mess with that little tinfoil hat? You can literally lay a beach towel on your induction cooktop and then sit your cast iron on top of it and cook. You can go on YouTube, just type in induction fry bacon towel, and you will get a million videos of people frying bacon with a towel under the pan to catch all the grease.
Why are they not marketing that? I feel like I should know that. Am I the only person that doesn't know that cast iron didn't work with induction?
Here's the hiccup with cast iron. Grandma's cast iron griddle was made with a really high quality cast iron that is not cheap Chinese garbage. You buy an inexpensive $30 or $40 cast iron griddle today, and the magnetic hysteresis of that material is going to be completely different than the high quality cast iron Grandma's was made with. So Grandma's cast iron will work very well on induction, but unless you're going to spend $150 to $200 on a Le Creuset, you probably won't get great results from cast iron that's made today.
What about like Lodge? When I think cast iron, like big box cast iron, I think Lodge. Like
That's what I use.
Yep, yeah. Lodge works fine.
Yeah, it's so cheap and just it works well. I get better performance out of my cheap Chinese induction using Lodge than I do at home using something even slightly higher quality on a glass top stove.
That's so weird. Why do people not know this? Cast iron with induction.
Because they aren't watching the Appliances Unboxed podcast to know.
Hey,
but no, I mean, seriously, the manufacturers don't want to communicate that, because if they tell you cast iron works, you're going to assume it's a blanket statement and every piece of cast iron cookware will work perfectly. And that's not the case. You buy a $15 thing off of Temu and it's made with hot metal instead of real cast iron, and it's going to work.
Yeah. It's like they should have a badge, induction qualified or something.
They do. And a lot of Lodge cookware has it. And a lot of Le Creuset cookware has it.
That's how much attention I've spent to that.
So if you look at the bottom of a pan, it typically will have blocks that indicate the fuel type that it's designed to work with. Induction is a block with a little squiggle in it, and gas is a block with a little flame in it, and electric is a block with a little horizontal squiggle in it. But you would never know that unless you were watching this podcast.
Crazy.
Right?
I wonder how many people cook with cast iron. Like if we were going to poll the general audience, Ben, if you were going to poll your audience of what cookware people cook with, cast iron, what are the options of cookware here?
Yeah, we'll do a poll and I can reveal it later.
Nonstick.
It'd be interesting to see what people cook with. In my world, cast iron is king. Like everyone I know cooks with cast iron. Like that's the benchmark of pots and pans.
I find it so interesting that you like how cast iron works, but you wouldn't even consider induction.
So when we're placing bets on what people cook with, what are your votes? Cast iron, stainless for the majority. If this is this going to be like another 60% blowout for normal mode on dishwashers?
I think this is going to be a blowout for nonstick.
Okay.
If I'm an aluminum pots and pan buyer, which I used to be, I'm probably not dying on my sword and promoting it. If I was guessing.
Right. It's going to be anonymous, so it can be truthful.
Yeah.
I guess I have to put myself in the mindset of a 35 to 44-year-old, which is going to be the majority of people on my channel. If I'm poor, I'm using aluminum. If I have a little bit more money, I'm probably using nonstick. But then if I'm a little bit older than that, I'm probably use stainless. So
And no
I think
cast
it'd be
iron was
stainless.
in there at all. You think that's going to be last?
Well, that's a regional thing.
I think it is.
I think if you're from the Northeast, you are not using cast iron. I think if you are from the South, especially like the deep South, like going hardcore Bible Belt, cast iron is your only medium of cooking.
So what's our poll sitting at?
I'm getting ready to pull it. It just had a big update at 23. We're up to 23. I'll post what we got because it's interesting. It's not a blowout like the other ones are. It's closer, which is more interesting to me.
I feel like if more people knew about how to like take care of cast irons and like the seasoning and the flavors that come from it, if you do maintain it properly, it's kind of like an art. It turns into a ritual after a while. I think we're more in love with the ritual than we are with the actual product.
You really are just leaning into tinfoil hat culture, aren't you, boss? Dang,
we still got
I thought
9%.
stainless would be a lot lower.
9% claiming the aluminum. There you
So
go.
let me see if I can snip this, and it actually updated a few more people, and I think everyone that just got added was cast iron, so it's already changed.
It's gonna be a tight race.
Yeah, it's quite even by comparison to what we have experienced with the normal setting on washing machines and dishwashers. In the very beginning of the poll, after about the first 10 votes, cast iron was leading. It was leading initially, and then stainless steel and nonstick blew up. And now it's kind of like, it's definitely a 3-horse race, but there's no cheap people on my channel apparently, with aluminum being so low.
I mean, I think my final point to really index on the whole induction thing is like, Scott, when you have the stovetop going, how hot is your kitchen? Even with the OTR on, it gets roasty toasty, right?
It does.
You do know that 35 to 40% of the heat coming off of your stove is waste heat that goes up and around the pan completely and into the surrounding room and doesn't actually do anything other than heat up the space.
I can see that.
So, like, think about it from the perspective of a more comfortable cooking experience. So not only do you get the precision of buying a $6,000 gas range without having to buy a $6,000 gas range, but you don't have any of that extra heat. It's safer. It's easier to keep clean because nothing burns into the glass. It's not like a radiant top where the glass gets so hot that when something boils over, it sears into the surface and you got to scrape it with that stupid razor blade thing you get with the bottle of Ceramibrite that doesn't work half the time. Like, you really do get all those performance benefits with basically no negatives. So, like, why would you be that hardcore resistant and really want to cling to gas like it's a direct drive washing machine?
The one thing I would say about induction that we haven't talked about is reliability. When it comes to reliability, I'm always concerned about the generator boards on the induction units. You're putting a lot of amperage through those, and you run into kind of the same problem you do with control boards on stoves. You have to put very durable components into the generator boards, otherwise they're going to fail prematurely. If they fail prematurely when I have priced them out for different brands, they are in that realm of the fact the OEM doesn't want you to really replace it, they want you to buy a new stove. So that's something that I get concerned about on them. Dare I say, I would almost question or think that a company like Samsung, given their background with PCBs, would be better than some of the other brands out there. But I don't know what kind of lifespan testing the different factories are doing on induction to prove that it's going to last quite a bit of time. But that is the one concern that I have, is longevity.
That makes perfect sense.
It's not a new technology, though. Induction heating for residential use has been around since the 50s, if you can believe that. It's just never achieved mass market adoption in the United States. We cling to gas and radiant electric so hard that it never really took hold here, compared to Europe, where induction is the dominant cooking method, and you basically don't see anything else.
Cast iron in the lead.
Here we go. Now we won't hear the end of it for a week.
Yeah. They're on my tribe. They're my peeps.
Well, that tells you how many people have induction-ready cookware. It's the majority. When you go to nonstick and aluminum won't work at all. You have to have ferrous materials in the inductions. So aluminum's out, most non-sticks out, and that leaves you with cast iron and, I want to say, stainless steel. But most people wouldn't know that.
On the tinfoil hat notion, I'd say the one thing that I would probably think about a little bit too much is if the power goes out, then I'm still able to cook on my gas cookware, which I don't think there's any solution to that. It's a very rare instance, but it does happen. But yeah, I think it just comes back to the ritual of cooking on gas. It's hard to get off that train when you've been on it for so long.
Like, Ben, what do you have at home?
Just a standard surface glass top GE that is something that I've fixed many, many times for my mother-in-law before we bought our house. Prior to that, I also was running a GE at our apartment. When we do redo the kitchen, I will go induction, full scale induction, because we don't have it plumbed for gas, which is weird because the house has a gas water heater. So usually where I live, if you have gas heat, you're going to have a gas stove, but for some reason it never got plumbed. And at this point, I would rather just go induction rather than pay for putting the gas in. Having said that, when I lived at home, my parents had a propane stove or propane cooktop, and I loved that thing to death. But I also knew what its limitations were. And it did have some limitations that made me enjoy it while I was at home, but simultaneously I adapted to smooth tops really fast.
All right, take us out. What's the latest poll numbers? Let's see if cast iron overtook even greater before we sign out here.
We got 57 views.
Still winning by a long
but only by
shot.
A point. Only by a point.
Well, more cast iron people will see it, and over time they'll get a head start.
Think that it will slowly gain a little bit larger lead. I don't think it'll have a sizable lead, but I would imagine cast iron will continue to be in the lead. And the comments that I have gotten so far were like, well, I have different types of cookware for different things, but I mainly use cast iron. Or another person said they're a big fan of enamel-coated cast iron pots and pans. Maybe they're a La Crusette. Yeah, maybe they're a La Crusette user as well. Someone else can afford a $500 Dutch oven.
Yeah,
it's worth it. It's worth it.
Expensive. Cool. Well, this has been another episode of Appliances Unboxed, and we will see you guys on the next one.